Shabbat Shalom, everyone. I have the privilege and honor of sharing the Torah portion with you guys for this week, and it is found in Deuteronomy 29, verses 9 through chapter 31, verses 30. And it is Nitzavim, Vayelech, which is a combined Torah portion, again, because 2020 is a common year. And Nitzavim means the one standing, and Vayelech is he went out. The portion starts with the children of Israel standing before God as heads, tribes, elders, officers, men, young ones, wives, and strangers, all together as one people, just as God intended it, as God reiterates the covenant that he made with them. In the beginning of chapter 30, we see Moses warning of the desolation that will take place should the people of Israel abandon God's Torah and go after other gods, which we know, unfortunately, that they did. But thankfully, God also promises that he will cause them to return back to the Lord, even if they are scattered to the ends of the earth. He will bring them back to the land which their fathers have possessed. In verse 6, Moses tells the Israelites that he will be the one who will circumcise their hearts, which is a good juxtaposition of what he tells them in Deuteronomy 10:16, where God says, Israel, you should circumcise the foreskin of your hearts. In Deuteronomy 36, however, God tells them that he will be doing the circumcising, not only on their hearts, but also the hearts of their offsprings, as well as their children, so that they will love the Lord their God with all their hearts and their souls. And this follows the line much like Paul also does throughout his writings, emphasizing the importance of the circumcision of the heart done by the Spirit inwardly. That is what is really important to the Lord. As it goes on, God speaks of the practicality and applicability of the Torah in verses 11 through 14 of chapter 30, which is where it tells us that the Torah is not too hard for us, it's not too far for us, it's not too high or too low, but it is near to us in our hearts and in our mouths, so that we might do it. In chapter 30, it ends with God's freedom of choices, clearly delineated. It gives you life, good, and blessings, or death, evil, and curses. So God tells us to choose wisely. The second portion, in this case, Vayelech, tells us of the last events of Moses' earthly life and the transition to leadership to Joshua. As I was reading the last few stories of Moses' departure from his life, I can only imagine the thoughts that crossed his mind. Can you imagine Moses thinking to tell them, don't mess up. You've come such a long way. The promised land is just around the corner. But also Moses being Moses and knowing how much they complained, knowing basically all the trouble he gave them, all the children gave him, knowing that they're humans, knowing how stubborn they are. And therefore we see Moses continually urging them to be strong, be courageous, be strong, be courageous. Do not be afraid, because God will be with you. He will be the one who will never leave you nor forsake you. I could also imagine the Israelites freaking out. Could you imagine this leader who's been with you from day one, who has led you out of literal and spiritual bondage? This man of God that God has taken, it is about to be taken away. And it was interesting for me seeing even God himself in chapter 31. Basically, it was like, you're about to die, Moses, and these people are going to turn around and go worshiping other gods. They're going to forsake me and break the covenant that I have made with them. So even God, at the end of Moses' life, told Moses to write down a song that can be a witness between God and the people, to help them remember when Moses is gone what they should do. So the portion actually ends with Moses writing the song that needs to be sang, which is actually found in Deuteronomy 32, but also writing down the Torah, the entire Torah from beginning to end, and giving it to all the people in leadership, to the priests, putting it in the ark, basically having everyone that will be left behind with the portion of the Torah, so that they will be able to reread it and apply it when Moses is gone. And that's how the portion ends. But for me, two things specifically stood out to me for this Torah portion. The first is found in Deuteronomy 29:18 through 19. It is where God warns and warns the one who hears God's sworn covenant and then turns around and blesses himself in his heart, saying, I will be safe, even though I'm not listening and I'm walking in stubbornness. This verse reminds me particularly of a verse that stood out to me even when I was a kid, which is Proverbs 29:1, where Solomon starts the Proverbs with, he who continues to harden his neck when he is being repeatedly reproved will suddenly have it broken beyond healing. This stubbornness, where God's heavy treatment is something that I see reverberated both here in Proverbs 29 as well in Deuteronomy 29, where both cases we see the stubbornness, but we also see God's heavy punishment and treatment to it. In Proverbs 29, God says the neck will be broken beyond healing, and in Deuteronomy 30, God calls him a poisonous and bitter fruit that is unforgivable, and one who will get the curses thrown on them and their names blotted under heaven. Such a heavy, heavy punishment. But this resonated with me because I feel like it's so easy for me to be stubborn. It's so easy for me to be stubborn even when I have the truth staring me right in the face. It's so easy to have excuses for me to stay who I am and where I am when others are pointing fingers at me, or be quick to switch it and say, well, this person is doing this or that person is doing that, or my circumstances or my environment, all these things are making me be where I am or do what I'm doing, instead of looking at the man in the mirror and changing what I see. So this particular portion made me see that I need to stop being stubborn. We need to stop being stubborn. We need to stop being stiff-necked and start being more teachable and moldable, because it is the only way that God can use us to mold us into his image for his glory, the way that he intends us to be used and using us. The second thing that stood out to me was choices. God said, choose life instead of death. Choose good instead of evil. Choose blessings instead of curses. It seems like three easy choices, but somehow, at least for me in my daily life, in my daily walk, it doesn't seem that easy to choose life, good, and blessings. I think for me, one of the reasons is because I am selfish. And choosing those three things would mean that I would have to deny my flesh and deny myself every single day. So choosing God's abundant life is not simply a matter of choosing to stay alive or just to survive, but rather to have an intimate, personal, and constant relationship with the Father. We see in verse 16 that God says choosing life is obeying God's commandments, loving the Lord, walking in his ways, keeping his commandments, statutes, and rules. We cannot simply choose life while also choosing to continue to do the things that please us. Sometimes it comes something that we actively do as Autumn and I, raising our kids, is to teach them that even when they're young, there's choices that they need to make. One of our children that's currently, one of our younger kids, is as they're learning their emotions, they have this line basically that they always say, you just made me so mad. And it's a funny thing, but obviously definitely not funny. You can't definitely laugh when they're doing it. But as parents, we try to explain the choices even when it comes to emotions. So we tell them that we choose how to react when others do something that gets under their skin. We choose to retaliate when a brother or sister hits you. We choose to say the right thing when someone says something mean to you, or treats you wrong, or treats you unkindly, or takes away your toy, or fill in the blank. We can choose to be mad, choose to hit, choose to trump their mean words with meaner words, and choose to repay unkindness with kindness. We can choose to use kind words when others say or do unkind things. So we tell them you can choose to listen to mommy or daddy when we tell you to do X, Y, or Z, whatever it is. These are all lessons that we're attempting to teach our 1, 2, 4, 5, and 8-year-olds in our home. But as a 34-year-old, I also have to make the same choices in my life. I'm the one who chooses to hit the next episode when I should be going to bed so that I can wake up early and spend time with God. I'm the one who chooses to spend time on my phone, on social media, over spending time with God or in God's word. I'm the one who chooses to participate in gossip instead of shutting it down and praying for one another. I'm the one who chooses to not show patience, grace, mercy to my children over being so quick to get angry, punish, or to get frustrated. I'm the one who chooses to do something that God prompts me over and over and over to stop doing. I'm also the one who chooses not to do something that God has prompted me over and over and over to start doing. So we are making choices every day, all the time, consciously and subconsciously. We are choosing life or death, God or the world, good or evil, blessings or curses every single day. I feel like 2020 has sure been one of the strangest years, definitely for me. But it is a year that God has brought a lot to the surface for me. And allowed me to see things that I haven't seen before. I am very grateful for this, but again, looking back and realizing what God is showing me in this portion is that it's not about what God shows me, but it is what I choose to do with what He's showing me. I can choose to change what he's telling me to change, stop what I need to stop, and start what I need to start, or I can choose to leave it alone and not change at all. So may we not be stubborn. That's the biggest lesson that I learned. May we not be stubborn in what God is telling us to do. May we not harden our hearts when God speaks, but rather may we choose life, choose good, and choose His blessings. Thank you.